I felt pretty vulnerable this week. So this week, been in the section of scripture where we talked about Peter's denial of Jesus. And a couple weeks ago, as I was preaching, I was talking about Judas and how he had this secret sin under the surface that he'd been nursing for a long time. And then by the time it was exposed, it was too late. It was tragic. And so this week, we've been really digging deep into the story of Peter. So Peter denies Jesus, and before he does it, Jesus tells him he's going to do it, and then when he does go through with it, he's filled with remorse. But what Peter did essentially was a really public sin. It was known to everybody. And then if you keep studying Peter's life, even later on in his life, like 15, 20 years after the resurrection of Christ, Peter does something again that's pretty dumb and kind of goes along the same lines as his denial of Jesus. Like he shows 15, 20 years later that he's ashamed, he's afraid of what people think, and he's called out for it publicly. And so this week, as I've been diving into the story, I've been really challenging people to expose their sin. And this video is gonna be linked to another video. So if you're watching this on Instagram, then on the next story, I'm going to put a link on there where you can go to the YouTube link. But in this next video, I shot a video with two other guys, two really good friends of mine, John Gorvet and Jason Parker. And we, in this video, are talking about the importance of accountability. And so what I mean by that is just having people in your life that you confess to on a regular basis. And so Jason, who's in that video, him and I talk every week. And if I've got something going on in my heart that is a struggle or is sinful or is a temptation in some way, I'm talking to Jay about it. And we're praying for each other. He's challenging me. And it's been a relationship that's actually been very life-giving to have someone that I can confess to. It just means that there's not secret things going on under the surface that are festering. And I'm encouraging people to do that. I don't know what you think of when I say that, but if you don't have that kind of relationship in your life, I would encourage you to do that. If you've got someone you can confess to, it's actually going to make you more like Jesus. And I would say too, look for someone that loves Jesus, that loves you, that's willing to call you out, but actually loves you and will help challenge you. But anyway, the reason I felt vulnerable this week is because in this video, I tell a story about something that happened 7 or so years ago. So you'll hear it in the video. I was confessed to Jason that I was being passive aggressive with my wife, and anyway, he called me out. It was good. But when we shot the video, I got thinking about how I wonder if I've even gotten any better, or if I'm still being this way with my wife. And so I was thinking about it because the video, I knew it was going to be shown at the school that Jason, John, and I went to. And anyway, I went home and talked to my wife about it, and she's like, lately you have been more sarcastic and passive aggressive. And it was hard for me to hear, but again, it was this thing was being brought out rather than it being under the surface and not being dealt with. This video that we shot caused me to have this conversation again with my wife, and she was able to say, yeah, this is I've just lately there's been more of that. And anyway, and the reason I say that I've been vulnerable is because I showed this video at our church last Sunday because I'm encouraging people to be accountable, but I couldn't share it without confessing that what I said in the video is something that I still struggle with. And so I'm making this video now and I'm confessing it. And the reason I'm doing that is because, not because it feels good to confess something like that, but because I think it's really important for us, if there's a struggle, if there's an area that we're weak or we're tempted in, to be willing to be honest about it. And so obviously this video is being shown and whoever wants to can watch it. And so, take it as you will, as far as what you think of me and all those things. But I do want to say, I wouldn't tell you with every struggle to go public, to make a video like this, or to say something in front of a whole church. There are some struggles that you're only going to want to open that up with that person that you're willing to be accountable with. But make sure you at least do that. There's some things that I've, gone through or wrestled with that I would only talk to my friend Jason about. but I don't want to keep it hidden. I don't want to keep it under the surface, because that's where it can become dangerous. And so with confession, with accountability, I just want to encourage you, if you don't have someone in your life, to just pray and ask God, like, to give you someone that you can have conversations with that will eventually point you to Jesus Christ. That as you confess things, as you get them off of your chest, that you're able to work that out between you and God. And that person that you invite into that process will actually pray for you, come alongside of you, and maybe call you out if need be, but will point you to Jesus. And so if you're on this, you're on YouTube, this is going to flow right into the video with this conversation with John, Jason, and I. And if you're watching this on Instagram, then just on the next story, I'll have a link there for the video. It's recording.
Boom, you're on. Well, hey Kingswood folks. My name is Jason, and I'm a pastor in Nova Scotia at Coastal Church.
And I'm Nathan Maskery, and I'm pastoring in Thunder Bay, Ontario.
And I'm John Gorbett, and I'm pastoring a church in Grand Rapids, Michigan called the Center Church.
Yeah, we just wanted to hop on here. Dr. Smith had asked us to share a little bit about accountability, which is something that is a huge part of our lives and something that was instilled to us while we were at Kingswood. And Nathan and John are two of my accountability partners. And we just want to each kind of answer the question of how impactful this means of grace is in our lives. And I like the use of the language means of grace, because God has incredibly used both these men in my life in profound ways. And it's been for every season. And it's not just been we think of maybe accountability groups and we think merely confession and heavy stuff, but it's actually so much bigger than that. It's all of life. These guys regularly ask me about my life, my kids, my wife, my family. John and I, this past week, we shared goals for the entire year with one another, and the things that we're hoping to do. If I'm going through something conflict related, I'm calling these guys. I'm asking for prayer. We share the deepest hurts, the challenges we're up against in ministry. We also do confess and are vulnerable when we miss the mark and fall short, and hold each other accountable. And these two guys are my best friends, and they love Jesus. And I just can't imagine. I can't imagine doing ministry without them. It to me, it's like a necessary for ministry. And so that's just a little bit from my perspective of the means of grace that it is. And in a minute, that's all I can share. But it's just been incredibly, incredibly impactful.
Yeah, I would agree with Jason. So when I was at Kingswood, so Jason, John, and I were all at Kingswood in and around the same time. And bands were something that was really emphasized. So getting into accountability groups. And it was really valuable for me while I was at Kingswood. But I would say even more so afterwards. This is something that I've kept up into my ministry. And like Jason, I can't imagine not having accountability in my life. I'll just share one story that kind of will show you why it's so important and why it's important to me. So there was one time a few years ago, I confessed to Jason that I have a tendency to be passive aggressive with my wife. And so my wife and I were coming up on 18 years of marriage. We've got 6 kids. And if you're married, you know that it's a challenge to have a healthy marriage. And if you're not married, just know you're stepping into a challenge. And so I was struggling with being passive aggressive. I confessed this to Jay. A couple days later, we were all hanging out. So me and my wife and Jay and his wife, and I said something sarcastic / passive aggressive to Vicky, and Jay just called me out on it. He was like, "Bro, you just confessed that you're not going to do that anymore. You're not going to have that attitude." And I was like, "Yeah, you're right." And it was wasn't one of those things. It wasn't condescending. It wasn't condemning. It was motivated by love, and it really convicted me. And it just helped me become aware of where I'm weak and where I need to grow. And that kind of thing has happened over and over again. And it just helps me to become more like Jesus. So it's a story that illustrates why I think accountability is so important.
Yeah, that's awesome. I would say the same for me. I mean, we were just talking earlier that I'm coming up on about 10 years from when I graduated at Kingswood. And I can look back over those 10 years and see that there, just like Nathan said, there were a couple relationships that I formed at Kingswood. The fact that the three of us are talking today is because for the last 10 years, we've all been in accountability relationships for that 10-year period. And I would say on some level, there really isn't, we're talking about holiness, there really isn't holiness apart from accountability. Like you can't really be holy in a vacuum. It's in relation to other people. And so to me, I've actually grown and transformed. Like the power of the Spirit has been realized in my life through other relationships, like guys on this call and like other students and friends from my time at Kingswood. So I would agree with these men. I mean, it is one of the most valuable things personally, but also vocationally in terms of being strong in ministry for a long period of time. So I'm grateful for the chance to share with you, and hopefully you take some things away from it as well.
Yeah.